If you're looking for the go-to cold drink, it's Coca-Cola. If you're looking for a cool place to buy or sell your car, it's most certainly We Buy Cars. Some brands are indelibly etched in people's psyche, and one such brand is We Buy Cars. Today, I've got the absolute pleasure of speaking to the current CEO and co-founder, Faan van der Walt. Faan, I've got one conundrum. 24 years this brand has been going. There's so much to talk about. Where do we start? Is there a better place to start than the beginning?
Michael, thanks for having me, and it's an honor chatting to you today. It's long overdue. Yeah, indeed, it's been a very long journey and an enjoyable one. You know.
But now you say long journey. 24 years sounds like a long time. It's a quarter of a century, but in reality, has it not gone quite quick?
It flew by. You know, some days you have to pinch myself because it doesn't feel real. You know, I never planned on becoming a player in the motor industry. After school, I went to study teaching and I taught for a number of years. But I was always dabbling a bit with cars, buying and selling cars, little motorbikes, and so on.
So now, very
so
interesting.
Yeah, it's actually longer than 25 years.
Amazing. So now, very interesting. You spoke about teaching. So no motoring background at all.
Well, the motoring background that I got, you know, when we grew up, we were driving old, dilapidated cars. My dad always let us work on cars. You know, you get that grease under your fingernails. That's me standing on a car, just replacing CV joints, stacking out an engine. He had a love for old Citroens, and they used to break down. But it's still one of the most beautiful cars, that Citroen Palace.
Now, when you say a French car breaking down, come on. Everybody thinks French cars are as reliable as the Japanese stuff. But talking about getting your hands dirty, what a way to start. 2001, yourself and Dirk, I remember I'm driving in Joburg. I see on a billboard, as you'll see on your screen right now, two young gentlemen with, it looked like Monopoly money in your hands. Was it Monopoly money? What was it?
No, it wasn't. You know, initially, and this is a funny story, we used real money and we wanted to get a message across that we are serious about buying your car.
So real 200 rand
real
notes.
money.
Yeah.
And then we put this on the billboards and the advertisements, and we got a really funny legal letter from SARS saying to us, listen, we see you've printed billboards with real money on. Wow. And the law states you cannot reproduce money in any way or form. So you can't like put it on a copier, for instance, and make color copies, but this is far-fetched. But we got, and then we designed our own money that we created, so it still looked like real money, but that's how it evolved.
But now every brand starts somewhere. If you take the name We Buy Cars, it truly says it all. It was what you did. How did the name We Buy Cars come into being?
Well, as you know, my brother and I founded this business. He's got a very different personality than myself, but we formed a really nice combination because where my shortcomings came in, Dirk was really good at. So he was always pushing the boundaries in terms of technology and what the future would hold for us and wanting to move steps ahead. You know, nowadays when we talk about advertising on Google, everyone knows what that means. But there was a day 20 years ago when he said, listen, we need a Google AdWords campaign. And I asked him, what's that? He said, we need a website. Way back. I said, why do we need a website?
2001, the internet was only 7 years old.
Companies didn't have websites. And he was the one who pushed. He was the one who said, let's get a billboard. So yeah, it was interesting. Our name initially wasn't We Buy Cars.
Okay.
We had a different name. And then we said, okay, but sure, let's get a website. Fair enough, but what do we call it? It must tell people what you do. And we brainstormed a few names and came up together with We Buy Cars, asked someone to find out if the domain was available. It was, we registered it, and that very soon after became our name.
That is incredible, because as I said, it truly tells you what you did. Now, you come from Bronkhorstspruit, am I correct?
That's right.
It's not exactly Paris, Milan, Rome, London and Bronkhorstspruit. How did you start? Buying cars from neighbors, family, friends?
Yeah, look, Dirk and I had a very conservative upbringing, but strict rules are rules. And I think that was what laid the foundation for We Buy Cars, is doing things the right way, but also being conservative. So yes, we started buying cars out of junk mail or the newspaper or from a friend, selling again, and slowly but surely, building a bit of a pool. But the big break came, I went to teach in London in 99 and 2000, and my wife and I managed to save quite a bit of money. To be correct, 300,000 Rand that we saved in those years.
What was the exchange rate as a matter of interest at the time? 12, 10 to 1.
10, yeah. So I came back.
Only 25 to 1 now, not a big difference.
Should have kept the money. No, but so we came back, bought a house cash for just under 200,000 Rand, and the balance, the 100,000 Rand, that was this, and Dirk put in some money, and we started this business in 2001 officially. And with that money, we could afford 3 or 4 or 5 cars.
Right.
Typically your 20,000 Rand car that was back then a 10-year-old. And we did that from the backyard. So we parked the cars in our house, the neighbors complained, but that's how we started. And then moved to a bigger premises and later to another bigger premises, started employing people, and the business just grew organically. We never looked too far ahead. There's the saying, clarity comes from action.
Right.
It does not come before action. So we have a habit and a culture of doing things, even though we might not know if it works out. And even still today, we experiment a lot, because without trying things out, you don't get the clarity of whether it works. So in order to see the way, you've got to start walking.
Of course.
The way will appear as you start walking. So that's our philosophy. That's what we do. And we have a great company culture that, if I have to sum it up, there's when I was a teacher, one of my mentors said one day, the way you speak to your kid,
nice.
The way you speak to your kid becomes their inner voice. And we all have a voice in our heads.
They feel it.
So the way a parent or a teacher speaks to a child, that becomes their inner voice. That will help them have confidence or be unsecure, depending on how you treat them. And it flows through into the workspace, your employees, your colleagues. How do you treat them? How do you... So we have such a culture in the business, and that's definitely been a real driver of our success. Yeah, we're all custodians of the culture.
But one of the things that I want to talk about, you take any brand, it can be life insurance, it can be car insurance. No one needs a new brand. No one needed We Buy Cars in 2001, 2005. And I don't say that rudely. You had a differentiator, and I remember that. There was a couple of ways to sell a car. You spoke about junk mail, Auto Trader, etc., the print form, or you would trade a car in. You did something uniquely different. We come to you. We pay you here and now. You thought, in my opinion, like the customer. I'll give you an example. You come to my house. I want you to talk to me like I want to be spoken. Michael, the money will be in your account before we leave. The vehicle's papers will be off your name within 2 to 3 days once we leave. Where did that idea come from, to go to the public as opposed to them coming to you?
I must give my brother Dirk the credit there. Once again, when I left to the UK to go teach there, I told him that I was dealing in cars, and I showed him what I did. And that was basically bargain hunting and trying to find cars that's being advertised. So Dirk encountered difficulty with that at that stage.
Is Dirk older than you, if I may ask?
He's just 3 years older,
Yeah, he's thinking, younger Boetie, we can do it better, am I right?
Well, anyway, so Dirk thought of a better idea. He thought, well, what if I could reach these sellers of vehicles before they put their cars in the market?
Clever.
So he started putting little adverts in places like next to ATMs or cafes or post boxes those days, saying kontant vir jou motor, cash for your car, phone me, and with little tear-off strips.
And nobody else was doing this. This was innovative.
Yes. For the time it was very innovative. So he would get a phone call, and it's like having a sole mandate for a period of time on a vehicle. And it's a phone call with intent. If you're phoning after someone, then you've got the intent, but when they phone you, they have the intent to sell. So it's a totally different mindset, and that worked well. And that's what we expanded on, when we started this business, is that marketing message to individuals. If you want to sell your car, you call us, we'll give you a great price, we'll come to you, we're trustworthy, we're not going to kick your tires, we're not going to negotiate you into the ground, we're going to offer you a very fair price, and it's going to be a pleasant experience.
And Faan, at this stage, was it relatively Gauteng based, or had you already had the vision to say there's 9 provinces, there's always a mentality in the motor trade. Wherever you are, the better cars are somewhere else. If you're in Joburg, the better cars are in Bloem or Kroonstad or Kimberley. Were you centralized in Gauteng, or could you operate nationwide at this stage?
No, look, so it's important to note that at that point in time, it was just me and Dirk, and we both had drivers. So we did everything. That's why I think every entrepreneur that starts a business must know his own business and do everything. We watched the cars, we drove the cars, we went and dealer stocked cars, we went to the banks to go and fetch the papers. If I received a lot of cash, I went to the bank and deposited the money. So I had to do the accounting.
In Afrikaans is a word for it. You were the kippie, literally.
100%, you do everything. But that laid a very nice foundation for us. So we got to know this business. But for nearly a decade, Dirk and I were the only 2 buyers of We Buy Cars. And we were Gauteng based, and we drove around Gauteng every day. I knew every street, every suburb. It's so interesting. It was it was like an adventure. You drive around every day. Now you're in Benoni, next to you're in Krugersdorp.
And using maps, if I may ask, or Garmin?
Maps, no, it was before Garmin. In fact, that's another thing where Dirk came in and one day he bought a GPS. I said, you're wasting money. Why do you buy a GPS? Now it's going to help us. Can you be? No, I'm using the map book, and I asked you, what's your street? Now you're in this street, and then you end up in the wrong place.
So I've got to tell you a little side note about maps. The reason he didn't have competition for me in those days is because I literally cannot read a map. People say north. I get north is somewhere there or in that general direction, but interesting. Sorry.
No, I heard that I learned the hard way that there's a Newlands in Pretoria and Joburg, for instance. So there's more than that. But
so you said you learned the hard way. Everybody knows the town of Somerset West. You heard of Somerset West?
Oh yes.
Have you heard of Somerset East?
I've heard of it. Yes.
How far apart are they roughly?
One would think very close to each other, but you're going to tell me something different.
I'll tell you the most incredible story. We buy a vehicle from a place called Cookhouse that's just next to Somerset East. But now I've heard of Somerset West. I'm hearing of Somerset East for the first time. Fly our driver to Cape Town. Tell him catch a taxi to Somerset West. He gets to Somerset West. We know where it is. It's obvious. It's a suburb of. We're in Somerset West. We're in Somerset East. He phones me. He says, Mike, we're about 1,400 kilometers away from our destination, so try beat that. But you spoke about a journey, you spoke about an adventure, doing it all yourself. If you had to give young people getting into business today some advice, would you tell them, I don't say start at the bottom, but know every facet of your business, and that will be a strength later. Would you agree with me on that?
Absolutely, because if you don't know your business, you wouldn't know how to improve it. So I think the one thing that every entrepreneur should have is a bit of impatience. And
I like that,
you should be also slightly irritated with the status quo. Always. There's no such thing as perfection. There's always, if you go into our office there, you'll see lists and lists and lists of things that are little projects of improving and experimenting, and you have to prioritize what will have the biggest impact, because you can't do all improvements at once, and you're never sure what the unintended consequences of those changes might be. But the advice to someone would be to firstly do something that you feel you might be good at and stick to it. I think people jump around too often and start trying something and then get distracted. We were focused. Focus is by far the most important thing. I loved what I did. When I was driving to a client, I would get in the mindset.
You saw the end result before you started.
It's like having a epiphany, or having a vision of what's going to happen here now. I'm going to ask this. I have a picture in my head of the car's going to look like that. I already know I'm going to walk around the car that way. I'm going to greet the person in this way. And you have your way of doing things. It's so important, people, if that first interaction you have with someone is vital. because within the first 30 seconds, their minds will be made up whether they're going to deal with you or not, even though they haven't heard the price yet.
So I've got a saying in business, and I'll stick to it. People always say, don't judge a book by its cover. I'm honestly totally the opposite. I meet somebody, as you said, you had to make that good first impression. I'm trustworthy. I'm here to do business. I'm here to make a name for myself. I'm here and I want you to recommend us to your neighbors. We're roughly 2010 now, you said, first 10 years you were doing it yourself. At what stage, if I may ask, because you have, and you can be proud of it, you're a JSE listed company, you have a monumental business today. At what stage did you realize this is a lot bigger than what we possibly initially thought? Roughly.
Yeah, so that was to go back to the question of, was it only Gauteng? It was only Gauteng for basically the first decade. But with our website gaining traction, we started getting leads all over the country, Durban, Cape Town. So we would fly down and go and buy a car in Cape Town, transport it all the way back, because we only sold cars here. And then only later we started opening branches in other provinces. But I guess the realization came when you got staff working for you and you no longer know their names.
Okay.
And you are appointing people where you are no longer sitting in interviews, but you're trusting individuals to do the work that you always did.
Now, as a businessman, a fellow businessman, and people watching, at certain stages, did you feel, and it's not a negative, that you were losing slight control? Not control of the business, but slight control of what made this business unique, i.e. you knew everybody, you knew every car that got bought, and all of a sudden we bought 20 cars. Wow, I didn't even know we bought these cars. Did that happen?
There's a bit of that, but there's also an advantage. So yes, you start allowing people to do the work that you always did. But now, I'm a qualified teacher. Dirk has got a degree in marketing. I'm definitely not a CA. So the fact that we appointed a very capable CA immediately added value to the business. The fact that we appointed someone who is a tech guru, Dr. Wynand Bekes, transformed this business. So we were good at finding and retaining good talent that had the ability to take this business beyond where we can take it. And together, we're a nice team. So very blessed, that we managed that. But we also kept ourselves open-minded in terms of input from others. There was a point when we sold a small shareholding to a company called Fletch Capital, and that brought people to the table that asked very interesting business questions, some things we never thought of, structuring it a bit differently, planning, capital utilization a bit differently, and so on. Just taking a business to another level that we weren't even thinking about. And so we had these little steps along the way, and the last one now being listed, comes with a whole
small little step.
Different requirement.
Now, Faan, as a businessman, you spoke about selling a share to Fletch Capital. I think every businessman needs a couple of things. They need recognition and they need funding. Was it a very proud moment for you when you saw somebody that said, I see value in what these two young, because at that stage you're young gentlemen, early 30s, what these two young gentlemen have done? Was that an incredible moment for you?
It certainly was, and it's also one of those moments when you realize, okay, there's some clever people who want to back you. So you're also suspicious as to why and what value they'll add. But again, it's a culture fit. You understand them, you share the same values, and you make it work. And I didn't look back. But yeah, the people from Fletch Capital, Louis van der Walt, he's a very well-known businessman. He built the Mall of Africa, for instance. So it was an honor dealing with them and being in the same business together.
Absolute recognition of what you're doing. But another proud moment, the Dome. So I've got to share a story with you because I love sharing stories. Last year, Bryan Adams was in South Africa, and I went to see him at Sun Square in Menlyn. And he goes like this, he's a Canadian guy, got a bit of an accent. He says, the last time I was here, we performed at a big center, which they've now turned into a parking lot. Obviously referring to the Dome. The famous Bryan Adams, you share a birthday with him. The acquisition of the Dome. would that be one of the absolute standout achievements for the group?
For sure, it's a big milestone for us. The Dome, if you told me 10 years ago that there will be a We Buy Cars in the Dome, I would never have believed it.
Was Dad's parking lot in the back garden in Bronco space just too small now?
Yeah, but I think the lesson that you learn from something like that is if you don't ask a question, a no will always be guaranteed.
Right.
We asked the question at the right time, and the owners of the Dome had nothing. It was mid-COVID. There was 0 concerts going to happen for the next few years. It costs a lot of money to run a place like that.
White elephant sitting there.
And we caught it at the right time. We spent a lot of money improving the Dome, but it was the right thing at the right time for us. And today it's by far our biggest facility, although we're now building one in Cape Town that's nearly as big as that, although it's not dome shaped, because the dome shape is actually not ideal for retailing cars. Something round, you always have got to have a square box. It works far better. But
the Ponte in Hillbrow learned that in the 1970s, don't build a round building by choice. But now you talk about new acquisitions in terms of properties. Currently, 18 facilities across South Africa.
Yep, soon be 20. We have opened our Montana facility in the north of Pretoria yesterday.
Congratulations.
And next week we'll be doing the one in Lansdowne in Cape Town, which can also house about 1,500 cars.
Now that's a very strategic location, because anybody who knows Cape Town, you've got the Atlantic seaboard, you've got the north, and then you've got the southern suburbs, Rondebosch, Claremont. So you are talking about everybody in that area coming to that facility. Very, very strategic, because there's nothing close to that around them, all right?
No, in fact, we bought it from a car dealer who wanted to build a franchise, one of the big franchises there, but they didn't get permission to build the franchise because it was too close to another dealership. So he was sitting with the land, and I just caught it at the right time and told him, listen, we'd be happy to purchase. We made an offer, we negotiated a bit and landed the land, and we developed, we have a person here called John Mills. He used to study with me back in the day teaching, and he's a very organized person. So he runs all these property developments for us. And if he says, I'm opening on this date, come hell or high water, we'll open and it will be done. So he's done this now a few times, and there's another few in the pipeline that you'll see in the years to come.
But Van, twice now you've spoken about the Dome, this property there, the right timing. Two famous sportsmen, I don't know who actually coined it, Niki Lauda or Gary Player, said, the harder I work, the luckier I get. In business, you always put yourself in that position. There's a couple of things I want to talk to you about. One of the things that I pride myself on when we do an interview like this, it's not scripted, we're not reading from any teleprompter, you haven't received 20 questions. A brand like We Buy Cars today, possibly, in my opinion, the most identifiable motoring brand in South Africa, doing in excess of 15,000 cars. Is it 16, 17,000 roughly? When you've got that many moving parts, things, I don't say can go wrong, it's inevitable. I often say to a person, if you wrote your name 16,000 times, I promise you, you'll misspell it and you'll say, how did I do that? The brand today is about quality. When you're doing something, as I said, 16,000 times, things can go wrong. But fundamentally, the amount of challenges that you deal with out of 16,000 cars is minuscule. You often speak about a team. You've got an incredible team around you. Customer service, is it fair to say, because that's the impression I get, is at the core of this business. Because customers coming back, customers recommending you is what keeps this business going, not just the advertising on the billboard.
Yeah, look, it's a very, very important topic, and it's something that we continuously develop and improve and find new ways to help customers. So the way I look at the We Buy Cars brand is in a few different ways. We have dealings directly with the public, that's split into buying from a public and selling to the public. But then a fairly large percentage of the vehicles we sell to car dealers. So you have that relationship. And then there are industry bodies. There are other dealerships out there. There are OEMs. And a naive person would see us as competition or a competitor, but we're all in the same industry and we all endeavor to raise the standards of, I mean, this is an industry with a bad reputation historically. I think
Really?
we've come
Used car dealers a bad reputation?
Yeah.
I thought it was just lawyers and electricians that had a bad reputation.
No, so I think it's everyone's responsibility to lift the game, especially considering that a large percentage of vehicle buyers, especially in the used space and the older cars, are first-time buyers. Now, if you can have a pleasant experience there, if you can sell a 10 and a 15-year-old car to someone buying their first car,
they're coming back.
you got them hooked for life because they had a pleasant experience. They can come back with the car, you offer them a decent price later on, and they can upgrade when their life circumstances allows for that. But the fact is, when you're dealing in second-hand cars, especially if it's an older car, there will be instances where a customer is not happy. So for us, we see that as a learning opportunity. I sat in our Silver Lakes branch just a week ago, and there was a client, he saw me and he came and knocked on the door. He says, "I'm very unhappy." Now, I could have called someone to come and help him, but
I'm there.
I'm
going to deal
there.
with it.
I said, "Come in, tell me and we sorted out this issue. This person, so every complaint is an opportunity to convert someone into an advocate for your business.
No.
I mean, we don't buy cars with the intent to sell troublesome vehicles. But that happens. It's in the nature of what we do. When you're buying old cars, they can break. Right. So it's all about informing the customer about their rights to return the vehicle, that will fix it, that will help educate what are the responsibilities of owning a vehicle. A lot of people buy a vehicle, but they don't understand, listen, I've got to maintain this, I've got to do servicing, etc., etc. So it's all an education process. And if you followed our website over the years, you've seen there's more and more and more educational content on there to
that
help.
is what is needed. But something, and I'm on record as saying this, and I'll say it again and again, the customer is not always right. However, when the customer is right, he's right. Let me give you a real world example. I can buy a brand new car for 600,000 Rand. I'm entitled to 100% perfection. There must not be one thing wrong. I buy a second-hand car for 400,000 Rand. I'm paying 2/3 of the new price. I cannot expect 100% new car for 2/3 of the price. I now go one step further. I buy a car for 200,000 Rand. I'm now paying roughly 40% of the price. How can I reasonably expect to have everything from the suspension to the shock absorbers to the oil usage to whatever the case may be exactly as if it was new? You've got to be reasonable. And that is what it is you spoke about on the website. It's educating. I look at a car, it's got faults. I'm not holding a gun to your head to buy that car, but it's identified the faults. I buy it. Can I reasonably come back to you and say, but guys, surely I expected it to be different? I don't think you can.
Well, we do. It's again about being reasonable and what was clearly communicated, and would it be reasonable to help the client? We would go beyond to try and maintain that client. If you're unhappy, let's see if we can swap it out for a different car or reverse the deal.
Nice, I like that.
Because I don't think people would come back and say, I'm upset about this deliberately. We recently changed what we used to have the old DEKRA report in order to display the condition of the car and to indicate if there are any roadworthy relevant issues that you have to deal with. We've now moved away from that, and we have a new inspection called Inspectify. It does all what DEKRA did, but puts the report in plain, understandable language so that you really know. Because sometimes they say, oh, fault code XYZ, and you don't know what it is. If it's well explained, you know what you're getting into. And at the same time, we've developed what we call Orange. It's a bot, AI chat bot that you can talk to. So you could typically ask the bot, listen, I'm considering this vehicle on We Buy Cars' website. Could you tell me, I stay in Centurion and I work in Bedford View, and I drive there and back 5 times a week. Wow. What would the fuel consumption work me out roughly per year? It'll tell you. Or what would the installment be, or roughly the total cost of ownership in terms of servicing it over the next few years? Because buying the metal is one thing, but that's only where you start. And I don't think everyone buying a car realizes, your repayment is X, but your fuel spent is Y. And
Maintenance,
if you can buy a car slightly lighter on fuel, you can actually buy a more expensive car, or save more money in the process. So you have to be savvy when it comes to this and make the right decision.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that. So often I get asked the question, there's a petrol option and a diesel option in the same vehicle. It could be a Toyota Fortuner, it could be a Toyota Quantum, it could be a Mazda CX-5. Which one is better? And I have a simple answer. If the one was identifiably better, the other wouldn't exist. It depends what you're doing. You're a taxi in South Africa, you're doing 120,000 kilometers a year. The diesel's giving you 10 liters per 100, the petrol's giving you 6 liters per 100. It's a no-brainer. You're a school, you're doing 4,000 kilometers a year. There's a difference in petrol price of X, but a purchase price of 40,000 Rand. It will take you 5 years just to recover that 40,000 Rand on doing 20,000 kilometers. So the answer can change depending on who's asking it. We Buy Cars, December 2025, 20 dealerships. What are the plans for 2026?
Mike, it's more of the same. Sounds boring, but
an uphill struggle in the most positive way.
Yeah, so we want to continue on our growth path. We are going to continue grabbing as much market share as we can by serving clients better, opening more branches, offering the service more widely across South Africa, and improving, the overall way things is getting done. As far as more locations are concerned, we are rolling out our pods across the country at most big shopping centres in all towns. Currently we're sitting on about 120, so we'll up that. We'll take it probably to 150, 160 next year. I think the magic number is about 200
pods
of these pods. Now, how do I get to 200? I learned a while back that there are 200 Toyota dealerships in South Africa. So I thought, if I'm in every town where there's a Toyota dealership, they've already done the market research. So we're going wherever they are.
So far, to say it's been a privilege and a pleasure to speak to you today is an understatement. But there's another pleasure and privilege that I've got, and that is I've been appointed by the marketing team at We Buy Cars to tell this story slightly differently. When I say tell this story slightly differently, the buying process, the selling process, the vehicle inspection, what is a pod? So we spoke about a pod, you heard that now. Not going to tell you what it is. Watch the show. Thank you for the opportunity. May you and the team continue to grow.
Thanks, Mike. Pleasure.